Welcome to Myanmar Musings, a podcast of the Myanmar Research Centre at the Australian National University, Canberra. I'm Luke Corbin. It's October 24, 2017, and today we are speaking with Stefan Huard, PhD candidate at the University of East Anglia, about his research on village-level community power relations in the Central Dry Zone. Hello.
Hi.
So could you please start by giving us just an overview of your research, including what questions you're answering and how and where you performed your fieldwork?
Basically, my research is about looking at the making of power relation in a small place in Myanmar, in central Myanmar, in the dry zone. It's a village. Mostly, it's based on a village called Goji. It's not far from Monywa, where I spent about a year and a half. About the research agenda, I was working there with an NGO. It's called GRET. It's a French NGO who is working mostly about on helping farmers, about technical advices for farmers. And I got the opportunity to work in several villages, and this one in particular. Thanks to this NGO who has been working there since many years now. So that's how I get there. I first did my master research with them, and then got a position at the University of East Anglia to pursue the PhD. So I was first looking on land issues, but to understand land issues, I had to look at power relations quite a lot and how they're made and unmade, not on everyday basis, but quite often. It's about the dilemmas people are dealing with on a daily basis and how they make sense of history, basically. So I kind of packed all things under the banner of the making of power relations. So it's a lot about the village headmen, for instance, traditional institutions, I would say, that are living in the village and are often out of the pictures. So it's really like local study of local relationship, everyday relationships that are unfolding there. And this has been quite difficult to study, but I'm really thinking that it does make sense to look at those things.
All right. So it sounds like you've been to a few villages, which is great, because my question to set the context is, how representative do you think Gorji is of Burmese Buddhist villages generally?
So yes, I do understand the question about the representativeness of the village where I've been working. So I worked there mostly because I got the opportunity to stay there. I got a very good relationship with notably the village headman living there. He was quite a young headman. So the decision to work there was not related to representativeness, but to give you a sense of how it is, what is this village like. It's a small village where there is about 500 people living there. It's not very remote. It's a few miles from the city of Monywa. So it was kind of a normal place. Nothing extraordinary happened there. And that was also the thing that I wanted to look at, something, let's say, normal. Because the idea is to look at the dynamics of social change. So I have no criteria to say at that point this village is more relevant to look at, etc. But I've been in many different villages, remote or very close to the cities, and it seemed to me like this one was a good place to start studying, and it's mostly related to the relationship you develop with people living there. And the actual feasibility of research concerning also authorization, circulation with the motorbike, etc., etc.
All right, yeah. Well, it's really cool to see an anthropologist explicitly concerned with conceptions of power doing this kind of work in Myanmar, at the moment at this historical juncture. So what kind of research has already been done on say, legitimacy and Buddhism and power in Burma before this current post-SPDC pseudo-democratic period? And what are some of the concepts we need to understand to really engage with this world? For example, the anthropological version of the gift and things like Gan and Bone.
So I would say there was not much work there is not much research on power. Mostly the work done is on is with a political economy perspective, and those work often also looked at areas like ethnic areas, hilly areas, and so on. And to look at the dry zone of central Myanmar, there was not so many things actually. The things you can rely on is work from Manning Nash, who did his fieldwork at the end of the 50s, just after the independence. There is also work from Schober, who've been working on Buddhism quite a lot, and she kind of set a sort of social structure, I would say, about how merits is related to power. Manning Nash also questioned this, and he gave us a more secular point of view on this issue. So they're both looking at Cain, Pont, and this kind of concept. So Pont, for instance, is how has been translated as power, like sheer power, pure power. Something, it's a quality, something that it's inside you, and you develop this also through your life. So it's individual and it's personal. This is quite related to the cosmology of people living in this central area in Myanmar, which is mostly Buddhist and animist, as you know. To look at how why is this person powerful, for instance, they will explain that it's because of his Pont. Cain is what a person is kind of the concretion of person deeds, which is a lot related to the cosmology of reincarnation in Buddhism. And Pont is another dimension, is the personal quality. It's something that someone is born with, and it's a kind of capital you developed. So it's something very individual, let's say, but at the same time it is always gauged by other people. You may say that someone is powerful if nobody is ever alone. So the inference aspect is quite important, and this is what I mostly take from Manning Nash. And this is very, very interesting to look at, is how people are gauging each other every day. And even if you don't use this concept about Cain or Pont, because they're quite heavily loaded with the cosmology or version or explanation of Buddhism, etc., you can keep this idea that people are gauging each other all the time. And this is quite difficult. I mean, if you navigate social relationship as a person, you're taken as a person, and people gauge you all the time. This is true in everywhere in the world, I would say. But to understand the dilemmas people are dealing with on a daily basis, let's say as a headman or as an elder in the village, this is quite important. And because there was no fieldwork possible in Myanmar for quite a long time, research has been mostly focused on religion, I would say, on Buddhism and cosmology. You can think about people like Schober, or for Bénédicte Braque de la Perrière, or for another anthropologist like Huard, for instance. They have done incredible work, and they often started with the anthropology of religion, I would say, because it was the way you could do it. And now we have this chance for looking at other dynamics. And I chose not to look much about religion first, and now I'm kind of regretting it. But I choose to look at what are the dilemmas people are engaging on a daily basis.
So from what I've seen of your research, you focus on a few key influential and recognized leaders or people in your field site village of Gorgie. So who are these characters? Introduce us to them. What are their lives like, and how do their actions and thought fit into your research?
I'm focusing the research now on the headmen and on the people which are called who are called the Luji. So the headman is the person that of Guji is the person that enabled me to do fieldwork there. His name is Kocho, and he's not that very old for a headman. So for me, it was very strange to navigate in several villages and to see like the headmen are quite different from one place to another. In, let's say, in remote villages, you have like old headmen, even sometimes they are in position since 88, and in others they're quite young. So that was kind of structural aspect of it that I did not understand, and so I start to look at how they get selected and why this person or not this person, etc. And it was very, very difficult to understand those things. So I kind of drop for now this the structural aspect of the study and mostly look at, okay, if you want to understand what it is to be a headman, then just focus on the person. So Kucho is kind of an average guy. He comes from the kind of well-off family in his village, but not the richest family. For instance, his family hasn't done lots of donations to the monastery, for instance. So there is not a correlation between merits and power as you could have expected, for instance. And he's entangled between villagers and the different government agent, I would say. So it's always a process of negotiation and of translating let's say, the policies on the ground. So, as you know, when you're a headman, you have meetings nearly every month with the township at the township office, etc. You have to do list of people for whatever purposes. What has been quite difficult, for instance, for Kocho was the titling of land. Because of the 2000 farmland law, they have to make a new titling process of the land, and this was quite difficult. It has to go on everybody's plot of land to see, okay, who owns what, etc., to make it clear on paper. And there was like heritage from the colonial period as well about how cadasters and register were done. Has to deal also with people from the land office, let's say the state land record department, etc. So there are different things that the administration expect the headman to do, okay? And on the other side, he's just another villager, so he's also taken into relationship, let's say, making his own family, dealing with NGOs, dealing with neighbors, making his own work in farming jobs, etc. So this is about entanglement. It's not about how a person is becoming really a leader because of his innate capacity, but it's more about how he developed and crafted his own position as a headman. I started with the idea that the headman, maybe you become headman because you inherit a position, etc. And it's not really like this. You are selected by the government, and the procedure of selection has changed quite a lot through history. So nowadays you have this leader of 100 household, a leader of 10 household that can vote for selecting the headman, and that's how he get selected. But at the same time, village affairs are not only about what government try to develop on the ground. You see, so there was this land titling project. There was also organizing the election won by the NLD, for instance. There was many different things the headman had to do. But on another level, I would say there are people who take care. They are kind of caretaker of village affairs, and in this place, this wasn't really the job of the headman. It was the job of what we call the Luji. So Luji is something quite interesting to look at. It's very tricky to understand what is or what could be a Luji, because let's say a famous person could be a Luji. Someone from, let's say, Aung San Suu Kyi is also a Luji. It has several meanings, but when you go down to a village and asking people about who can be seen as a Luji, this has some kind of an ethical meaning as well, you know? So basically my thing was to say, okay, we have the headman, which is kind of a broker between government and villagers. And on the other side, you have all this realm of village affairs where the Luji are very important, and they are often not related with position, with official position. So it's also, they also embody traditional institutions like the Yamiyapa or the leader of the bachelor groups, etc. Okay, so the idea that there was in the village, you have the headman, you have the Luji, and the Luji, they take care of the village affairs. And within this village affairs, you have what is called the Lumuye. And Lumuye is about social obligation and duties. And if you look at the literature, you often see things about clientelism or about pung, about charisma, etc. But you have not much about how the village could be a sort of scale, a meaningful scale, right? And this was quite interesting for me to look like, okay, aside from government, official, institution, etc., what's going on? What are the dilemma the villager they're facing? And you can be as an individual, you have different kind of relationship, and you can go to the level of the family. But if you look at the village, then there was no thinking about this. A sort of thinking you often found in anthropological literature in Africa or in South America. And I was a bit struck, and maybe it's a lack of knowledge from me, that there was not these things in Southeast Asia. So yeah, but those guys, they were here in front of me, and they organized the different ceremonies. Let's say for marriage, for Buddhist novitiate, like called the Shimbyu. They also take care of managing the roads. If the NGOs are coming to the village, often there is one of them that is going to be the person listening to, etc., etc. So they're kind of everywhere and at the same time hidden, and this is also part of how of political life in a place.
All right, let's try and place these characters into a particular, for example, novitiation ceremonies. I think you must have carefully attended several of these. Could you give listeners a run through of what those ceremonies are, and how they play out over time, because they're not just finished in a day, and their importance to villages like Gorji and to the ideas of power relations that you're working with?
If you spend a bit of time around Monywa or in many other places in Myanmar, I mean, it's not just about Monywa, you will often encounters different ceremonies, and one of them is quite a very important one is called the Shimbyu, the novitiate, how a young boy become human, and maybe more than human, by becoming a monk, right? And it's a donation ceremony. It's called a Hlu, which is very, very important in the cosmology of people living there in Myanmar, like meritocratic donation. So when you make a Hlu donation, you make your son becoming a monk, and at the same time you gather some merits, I would say, to put it very simply. And for me, I was invited many, many times to different Shimbyu, but I didn't want it to look at it from a, let's say, anthropology of religion perspective. Okay, so at first I wasn't really very interested about these rituals, etc. But I understand that it was very, very relevant if you want to see how people deal with each other. So my idea is mostly to look at a ceremony like this from its kitchen, I would say, from a very, very basic perspective. And so you look at the ceremony is often goes for about at least 1 day, often 3 days. Okay, so at the beginning, the person who want to make a shimbu for your son, so that's a decision you making quite a long time in advance, and you try to figure out a date which could be auspicious for this. So you can either go to the monk or either go to one of the villager who knows about astrology, for instance. Then you set a date, and then you have to organize it practically. And in the village, you have a person which is called Lubyogan or Kalatagan. It's two different names. Actually, he's the leader of the bachelor. So everybody who is not married, as a male and also a female, there are two groups. They are part of this status group, and they have to give a hand, basically, when people are making ceremonies in the village. And you have this person, the leader of the bachelor groups. There is one man and also one female that they have to organize those things. So you meet with them and you told them about, okay, what is the scope of the donation you want to make, etc., how many people, etc. And they kind of organize it, not everything for you, but the village is used as an organization for this. The few days before the halu, you need to build the structure, the mandate for making the ceremony, and for this you may send a different gift to different villagers, asking them to give a hand at that time. And for instance, I was asked to give a hand washing the dishes, and this was materialized by giving me a chirut and sometimes tea salad. And so you accept this and you engage yourself, saying, okay, I will go there. I will go and give a hand. On the actual day of the ceremony in the morning, the first people who are going to receive, the first person receiving a donation of food will be the monk in the monastery, Sankare. That's the one of the first steps. But you have these huge pots of rice and meat cooked by also some of the villagers that are the cooker. And people arrive. It could be dozens. It could be hundreds. Depending of your network and about the scope of the shimbu you're making. Everybody's coming for eating, because a big part of the donation of a shimbu is feeding people. So you arrive there, and sometime before you go and eat, you will give some money to the donators. Often this money is used to make another donation later on to the monastery, for instance. But it's also can be used as a collective funding of your donation. There are different possibilities. So you go there. You arrive, you give a little bit of money, you eat. If you're part of the village or if you're close relative, you will give a hand washing the dishes, putting new plates, etc. So I spent quite a lot of time doing this, and it was quite funny for people living there to see a white guy doing this. But I mean, for me, it was also a way of being part of something. It was really interesting for the research, but in terms of relationship with people, that was really, really good, very interesting. So you get there and you see this leader of the bachelor group giving some orders, go this, go there, etc., do this, do that, and at the same time they keep up the register of what everybody is giving when they arrive at the donation. So every small donation people are making, this is called a lepwe, they make notes of everything. So it's kind of a record book of donation. And then you have different ritual taking place, like a procession within the village, and you go to the monastery where the young boy they carry as king to be, which is the meaning of shimbu. They carry it on some wooden structure. Which kind of represent the royal ceremony on elephants, etc. So they are making king before being monk. That's the one of the main part. That's the purpose of the ceremony. But alongside this purpose of offering a shimbu to make one's son a monk, there is all these different exchanges, food offering, help. and counter help, etc., going on. And that was very interesting for me, because when you look at how people, who is helping, who is not helping, etc., you really see how people also gauge each other, how they evaluate each other, who is helping for who is by his action is kind of making sense of the village as a collective. If you want to analyze a ceremony like this, you can go in different ways. Let's say the classical standpoint was to look at it as a field of merit, and that's also a way people could explain Schober. This has been clearly set out by Schober in her PhD in 1989, and she was saying, also drawing from Lehman, when you're making a meritorious donation, you're also often sharing your merit with the people who are involved in the ceremony. And when you go, for instance, in a Shimbu, and you receive, many people receive a small letter, like a sort of postcard or something like this. And on this paper, it's on this invitation, it's clearly stated that the merit sharing ritual will be performed. Okay, so it's when you make a Shimbu, you accomplish the fact that your son will become a monk, and it is very also important for the mother, which has not the same level of pon, I would say, compared to men. So it's very important for the parents to make a Shimbu, and also because they will receive merits from making such a donation. Okay, you offering your son to the religion, to Buddhism, to the Buddha. You putting him on the way, on the right way, and you receive lots of merits to that. That's one of the donation from which you receive the most merits. So this is very important, and it has been analyzed as a field of merit. So everyone who basks in your aura of merits, I mean, everyone who's around in the ceremony will receive some merits deriving from your own donation, if you see what I mean. And from my perspective, I cannot disagree with this thing about field of merit, but the idea was, if the more you make merits, and the more you are influent in some ways, you see. So this was quite interesting for me because, for instance, in Goji, the big donators, they were not the person, the most influent person. They were respected for the donation, that's for sure. But they were not, let's say, leaders, and at the same time they were not seen as the Luji. Okay, so you have a contradiction here that I want to point out, that there is the field of merit is an explanation of how hierarchies are built through the field of religion, but at the same time, it's not. You cannot explain this. You cannot explain power relation in a village only with this theory, and that's how you relate with the idea of pon and kin. Developed by Nash, for instance. It does not only have to do with the merits. It's more about clientelism and how you build affection, because you have qualities that makes you a person, an important person, and those qualities are seen and evaluated by other people, etc. And this makes sense for me to analyze power relation in a village and to understand the dilemmas people are facing on a daily basis. Okay, if you see what I mean, the idea was to go from this idea of field of religion and to see what else can we bring in the picture. And the way I try to frame it is how people engage with each other in different forms. So you can engage in terms of merit, but you can also engage in terms of clientelism, and you can also engage in terms of collective affairs.
So given this quite detailed ethnographic study, that was great, thanks. What would you like to say to NGO workers and others who, regularly parachute in to Burman villages, and they only work there for a short time, within or alongside, these ceremonies, fields of merit? Can your research translate into any concrete advice for foreigners working in villages like Gorgie?
In concrete situation, actual situation, you obviously will deal with the headmen, but there will be other people that could be key in developing a project. And even if the NGO workers, they are aware or not of this, those people will be in the picture anyway, if you see what I mean. I cannot say, okay, you should do this, you should do that. It's very tricky, but to be careful about the implication of seeing a place according to institutional forms. So it's not because you have a headman or you have this kind of authority which is labeled on paper that things are going to happen this way in a place. You have to follow the procedure. That's completely normal. You have to meet with the headman, etc., etc. And but you have to be sensitive about what are the dynamics in a village. So from one place to another, it could change quite a lot. People are not simple. I mean, from my experience, I often heard that villagers are simple people. And this is absolutely wrong. And this is one thing to say, but I mean, if you ask yourself, why do people outside from the village will say such things? I mean, when you go with an NGO project, you want to improve something in a place, okay? And you have all the guidelines, etc., for doing this and best practice, etc. And translating those things in an actual plan or an actual understanding of a village is quite difficult. So the main advice I would say is taking the time to understand how people make sense of their own problems. Just looking at how things are done with or without an NGO is very important if you really want to make a change. So just to give an example about water access, for instance, it's a combination of getting help from different NGOs. It's about getting also donation from big donators. Let's say, for instance, in Monywa, or it can be also monks that are from the village who are now in let's say in monastery in Mandalay, and they can also like kind of orient the donation toward the village. It's about also making, for instance, a lottery in the village for everyone to get involved and to pay for their own water pipe. So it's an assemblage. It's completely an assemblage, and this assemblage donation is very important, and at the same time how you make something collective is very important. Okay, so for instance, you have those two aspects, and I just say that donation was kind of central for all these things, also about merit, etc. But when you relate to collective affairs, then you see who's taking care of collective affairs, and that's where Lugis comes into the picture. So I'm hoping that my study can help understanding those things.
Fantastic. That's really great. Very, very interesting. So now I need to get a recommendation from you. All of the guests on Myanmar Musings give a recommendation at the end. And I think you've had a little think. What do you have for us?
I will recommend everyone to at least try one time beetle. You have to try to shoot beetle at least once. Yeah.
Okay. Go on. Okay. All right. Well, so why are you recommending that, if you don't mind me asking?
It's to get a taste of the country, I would say, and also it's really helpful when you want to link with people. Yeah. If you shoot beetle, then it's way easier. It's part of sociality practice. It's something you see everywhere. So yeah. That's something.
It really opens doors.
Yeah, at least once. It's like going to the tea shop. You have to try at least once. That's okay. That's good. It won't hurt too much. I mean, 1 hour traffic jam in Yangon is worse than one shoe of beetle, right?
Sure, but I would say don't do it for the first time if it's late at night, because I tried that and I couldn't sleep for hours.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, it's been really fantastic having you on the show. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And good luck with the writing up stage of your PhD.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.